we're live. Hi, I'm Chris Lethem here with The Economy and You here on Think Tech Hawaii. I have a special guest today. His name is John Roco. John has ran for the Senate, the U.S. Senate previously, and he's running again. John, thank you for being on Think Tech Hawaii here at thinktech.com. And I just wanted to invite you to come onto the show this week. You know, running for U.S. Senate is a big bite.
Yes.
There's a lot involved with running a Senate campaign. I ran for state Senate, you're running for U.S. Senate. I can't even imagine the amount of work that goes into running for U.S. Senate.
Yes.
So I noticed that you had some issues that when we talked a little bit, there's some issues that sort of came top of mind for you. So I wanted to let you come on the show and talk about some of these things, because I think these are issues that are sort of newsworthy. They're things that people are talking about today.
Yeah.
We had the issue, of course, with the transgender bathroom issue. I think this was in one in North or South Carolina?
Yes, you had it in, I think, in one of the Carolinas, and then also nationwide, how Obama is now saying that, well, federal funds will be withdrawn from schools that do not comply and allow transgenders to pick the bathroom of their choice.
Well, why not just have a third bathroom?
And so, you know, a third bathroom for transgenders, okay, that could be something that a lot of funds, if the federal government wants to put those funds there, that type of thing. But right now, that would seem like a good solution. Right now, a lot of schools, they're trying to provide different sports facilities, different arts and crafts, a lot of different requirements on the schools, and providing a third bathroom just for transgenders. And how much of the population is transgender?
Well, it's sort of a strange topic, because, you know, we've had this whole issue of changing. You know, the military is now accepting people that are openly homosexual.
Yes.
Now, I don't know about cross-dressing in the military. I don't think they really have a policy on that yet. But it would seem to me that if you're a woman, you still got to go through women's boot camp with women, and if you're a guy, you still got to go boot camp with the other guys.
I think you're exactly right, Chris, and I think that's where we draw the line. I've known situations, and this is actually talking to military fellows, and there's actually been scenarios in the Philippines where this has happened, where cross-dressers would not reveal that they're cross-dressing because of their sexual preference or something. They would not reveal it. They'd go out with an army fella or something, and then after the fact, after things have happened, then they would reveal that they're a male instead of that female that they thought they were.
Oh yeah, that's generally not a good thing.
Yeah, actually, I'll take it further for you.
Yeah.
You know, that happened, and obviously, if someone is a straight soldier,
right,
you know, and he thinks that he meets a woman, and he goes out and they have a good time, that type of thing, and to find out later on that that's a man,
he is going to be upset.
This actually resulted in a death.
Yeah, I would imagine. I mean,
yeah.
You know, there's a kind of
well, it's dishonesty.
Dishonesty.
It's a ruse.
Yeah.
It's a ruse.
Right. Yeah.
And so, you know, we need to draw the line that at a certain point, individuals need to know the sex of the people that they're around with. That is very important, not just for the sake of the people that would date them, but also for the sake of the people that would be cross-dressing. It'd be very important for someone who's cross-dressing that someone who potentially is dating them knows that they actually are a male.
Well, a lot of cross-dressers. I have a friend of mine who was apparently in the closet for many years, and he came out and started openly dressing as a woman.
Okay.
I was visiting him, and I noticed very large dresses in his closet, and I think he noticed that I noticed them, and he ultimately told me what was going on.
Okay.
Now, I didn't have an opinion about it. I think he's an adult. His children are grown. He can do whatever he wants.
Sure.
The thing is that you know, he doesn't look like a woman. I mean, he looks like somebody cross-dresses.
Okay.
He still looks like a guy even when he dresses up as a woman. I mean, it's still fairly obvious, right? Now, for those who don't, I mean, there are some who cross-dress that, you know, really look the part. I mean, what's her name? Bono, the daughter of Sonny and Cher Bono.
Okay.
I forgot, Chaz. I guess she goes by Chaz now.
Okay.
I've noticed over the years she has facial hair. She was born a girl, but she has facial hair now, and she really looks more like a guy.
Yeah.
So I could see there would be some level of deception there.
Yes.
Because it's less obvious.
Yeah, and at the same time, when you say you've had experience with cross-dressers, I was right after college, I pursued a career in theater and acting, and TV. I did some TV commercials. I declined some movie type of things.
But this is a very liberal crowd,
Oh yeah, and that's what I'm getting to. I was in an agency, and we go to certain events, and even amongst the agencies, there's agents that are obviously homosexual, that type of thing. And they'd say, "Oh, come to this event, come to this event." Well, I went to an event where the only straight people were me and a few other fellow guys that were actors, and there was about 50 cross-dressers there. And some other people in power, some other people in power, some other people in power, and I was completely fine. I mean, they were who they were, and we had discussions, we had talks, and that's completely fine. They can be what they are. But when you bring it into the school system, it's highly important that in a regimented situation, okay, that's fine. You can cross-dress like the people that went to that party. They went and cross-dressed at that party.
Right.
And obviously there were guys that were dressed, like they were. But there are some guys that when they do cross-dress, it can be very deceiving. It will not be known. And let's just say that, hey, in a school situation, okay, these kids, they're before 18 or something. Right. Okay, you can cross-dress. It'll be a few years, before you graduate. High school.
But my concern also has to do not with. I mean, there's a lot of bullying that goes on for these kids. I mean, they're subjected to bullying from other kids oftentimes. I mean, I know when I was a kid, if you stood out on anything, that was a reason for somebody to pounce on you. And
I'll tell you right now that I went to a school, and I'll say this to you, and this is very interesting for me to say this to you. There was one African American. And he was a football star, and he eventually left the school. After he left, there was no African Americans. And so me, in that school, I was called by some, and I'll say this, they were friends of mine, but for fun, they called me the N-word. For fun, they called me S, other things. And I was bullied. Now, people go through bullying. That is life. Yeah. That is something that actually, what we ought to do is have the teachers involved and the administration involved in a more full way. And
the parents too, maybe.
Yeah, parents, I mean, bullying happens. Now, obviously not every school or principal or administrative staff will be on top of it so much.
Yeah, because it's going to happen.
But that is a part of what we learn to deal with. I mean, what are we going to say now? Oh gosh, that there's bullying of people that own poodles and want to bring them to school. So we're going to have a bathroom there for little poodles, when they go to high school. I mean, what are we going to do now? Oh, there's bullying of people of Italian descent in this small Jewish neighborhood, so we'll have a certain bathroom just for the little Italians.
Or if you're the Jewish kid in the
I mean, that is a part of life. But what we're having right now is from a federal level, and this is U.S. Senate, from a federal level, we're saying, well, these people are more special than everybody else, and so we will take funds away from schools because you need to do what I say, and that. Is
so. What you're really talking about isn't so much. It sounds like to me this is an example of the top-down mandate approach the government takes.
You got it.
With sort of issuing mandates.
Exactly.
That come down from the federal government and really sort of goes beyond the scope of what federal government was designed to do.
Exactly.
Is that what we're getting to?
That is what we're getting to. And the way how I trace it back, and I could be wrong. I'll just say that. We're all human. We think in our minds that
I'm never wrong. I'm just misinformed.
Okay, I'll try to be that way too. But we could all be wrong. But I trace a lot of this back to something that happened. The reason why I actually first got involved in politics. I was just a regular person, never thinking I would be interviewed or something or run for office, never thinking nothing. And I heard one simple statement. And a lot of people out there will remember this statement. oh, those small town people, they're sour, and so they cling to their guns and religion. I go, what? That just hit me. That just hit me in the face. Now, you know,
when you talk about that, you're talking about being sour. They're sort of seen as very provincial and
yeah,
that
just
sort of
bickering,
small town
that
mindset.
type of thing. Yeah, small town mindset, and it just hit me between the eyes. You know, buckshot, whatever. It just really hit me because what I saw then was something be said against me and all of the Army guys I grew up with. And I'll say that. I grew up in a town where my best friend went to the Air Force Academy. Oh, no. What did I say? Oh, yeah, Air Force Academy. The guy down the block went to the Army Academy. The wrestling, the heavyweight in our wrestling went to the Navy. Someone else, I mean, I grew up around Army guys. I tried to join the Army, but I had asthma, so they didn't take me. But I grew up around all these Army guys that served our country. And small town Army guys, okay?
Yeah.
And this was, and I'll have to say that where I grew up, there is a huge veterans museum that has the very flag that Bush had when he said, you know, we made some certain great success in Iraq. That flag that was across the aircraft carrier. I have all these friends that cling to their guns and go into the military service and use those guns. And we have someone who potentially would be president that's dissing them for clinging to those guns, by which they go into the military service and law enforcement and what have you, and provide food for their families. That statement got me into...
That motivated you, did it?
That's the reason why, yes. That's why I'm here. That statement did it to me. And I'll have to say that, you know, there were people around him at the time and were really smart because they just shut him up and made it so that he wouldn't say other things, and there were other things coming out.
Well,
and
you know,
Jeremiah Wright and everything else, all those connections was, you know, this top-down stuff, it's from a certain mindset that was hidden during those elections.
Well, it's an I know better, you know, it's an I know better mindset, right? So instead and rather than, it would seem to me that what you would want to do is issue a policy that says you need some kind of a structure to address these issues. You don't necessarily have to mandate what that structure should be. Simply saying, you know, here's an issue that we need to address because it has, you know, some sort of major social impact. You know, and the thing is, you know, this is all sort of, when you talk about in the school system, right? You're talking about the well-being of children. Right now. And you're talking about maybe, I don't know, there was something going on with, I'm not quite sure I understood the legislation, but something about if you, in one of the Carolinas or some of these states where you had to go into the bathroom, that directly correlated to your
birth certificate.
Your birth certificate, right? That's when. So, but that's a little scary because if I have a little girl that's 4 years old, and I send her into the bathroom, or 5 years old, and I send her into the girls' bathroom because I'm not allowed to go in there, and some guy walks in. It looks like a guy walking in there. That's exactly it. And then I'm going like, wow, that seems that may not be in my best interest of my child.
And not only that, you have a two prongs happening here. The first prong is that in mandating this, you know, from the federal government, then already you have the talk of how to implement it, how to make sure it happens, and it's almost like these stories about where there's sex education in the schools, and you bring people in to expose these children to different ways of doing sexual practices. Well, by mandating this, and saying that from now on this has to happen, it's like, well, now we can push an agenda in the schools and bring in some cross-dressers into the schools and try to explain to the kids why this is important. So that's one prong, that type of thing. It's kind of, it's not a mandate for the sake of doing something overall to the structure of the nation that's good. It's a mandate to push an agenda of a certain population into the school stream.
Well, it's a social agenda. It doesn't really have anything to do with the function of government. I don't think it's a function of government to push a social agenda.
It's extremely far-reaching. But the other prong, and this is the dangerous one, because what we have, and I am a psychology major. I was getting a PhD in psychology, but I had a car accident. I'm an ABD, ABI, and ABP, meaning all the dissertation practice from an internship. I finished all the classes. I finished the 3.5 years of statistics, what have you. Okay, the other part of it is the statistical part, and I think we can get to that after the commercial break.
Yeah, we can come back. We could talk a little bit about some of the statistics. I'm Chris Lethem, and this is The Economy and You. Today's guest is John Roco, who is running for U.S. Senate. He is the Republican candidate here in Hawaii, and we look forward to seeing you in just 1 minute.
Aloha, my name is Jeff James, and I'd like to invite you to watch my show, The Military in Hawaii. It'll be shown every Friday at 11 a.m. here on thinktech.com. Aloha.
You're watching Think Tech Hawaii, citizen journalism from Hawaii, finding the intersection of our sense of place and our place in the world, right here at home. Great content for Hawaii from Think Tech.
Aloha, my name is Reg Baker, and I'm the host of Business in Hawaii with Reg Baker. Business in Hawaii is a program that talks about the positive stories in Hawaii. We're tired of hearing all the negativity. We don't want to hear about all the downside. We want to hear positive stories about business in Hawaii, and that's what Business in Hawaii is all about. We broadcast live every Thursday at 2 o'clock. Go to livestream.com for that live broadcast, and we also rebroadcast on Olelo 54 and OC 16. We look forward to seeing you on the show. Take care, and we'll see you next week. Aloha.
Thank you for coming back. I'm Chris Lethem here with The Economy and You and Think Tech Hawaii. Today's guest is John Roco. He is running for U.S. Senate, and we were talking about some of the issues with his mandates from federal government, and you were going to talk to us a little bit about some of the stats that you've gathered regarding some of these mandated issues.
Well, the stats, okay, and I cannot speak exactly about transgenders, but when I worked in juvenile detention, and this was a juvenile detention facility for boys.
For boys, okay, juvenile detention for boys.
Yeah,
okay.
Juvenile detention facility for boys, and it was the premier treatment, the lodge that I worked in, where I did my internship. The lodge was the premier facility in that state for juvenile sex offenders, meaning that young men that were sexually abusing other people.
Right.
And
you're talking about some of the statistics in terms of
that population.
Of that population.
Yeah,
okay.
and now, so for the individuals in that population, of course, it's confidentiality. I'm not going to talk about any individual,
of course,
obviously. But the majority of boys in that treatment facility, I think we had 25, 30 over the time that I was there, the majority were homosexual.
Really?
Meaning that, and all of them had been sexually abused by men.
Previously, before they became offenders?
Yes. All of them were repeating behaviors that had been done to them, except they're doing it to boys.
But they weren't all gay, but they had all been.
Yeah,
they would all sort of develop predatory behaviors the abuse that based on the abuse that they had received.
You know, I'll just say that when I was there, a requirement of me as a counselor in training was to develop a treatment program. You know, a group manualized. Manualized means it's a manual. Okay. I had to develop a manual to treat these individuals. And
now, what were you treating them for? Because homosexuality isn't.
Oh no, I wasn't treating them from homosexuality.
Right.
I was treating them from predatory behaviors.
Okay.
That's what I was treating for, because these were sexual offenders, juveniles, that were essentially doing, and I'll say sometimes it was to the T how they imitated what was done to them.
Right.
And
I can relate to this. I had a family friend who was assaulted when he was a boy, and he developed the same sort of homosexual tendencies, and later on eventually contracted AIDS and committed suicide. Just tragic life story for this young man. So
and of course you can talk about that because you're not a counselor. There's cases that I have that,
and I'm sure there's probably similar scenarios of really, kids that have just been through hell.
And that's the thing I can talk about is the trauma. In the treatment model I had, the big thing was dealing with the huge amount of trauma that they went through.
So let's pull this back in a little bit then,
sure.
Okay? Because we're talking about this. How does this impact with what we're talking about with the federal government and the mandates from the federal government, and how people have to go back to these, they have to use the exact bathrooms.
Exactly.
So I mean, because if they're a guy, is the concern that guys would go in who are necessarily dressed up as women and would assault somebody? Is that?
That's exactly what I'm getting to.
Okay.
Statistically speaking, the population that, I know the population that's homosexual, there is...
Because I see a difference between a pedophile and a homosexual.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that that population, from the statistics in the treatment facility, you know, the percentage, and I can't get into this with you, I can give you estimates, but the percentage that have been sexually abused, you know, is a pretty high percentage. I'll just say that.
Now, transgender and transsexual, is that...
Exactly.
These are different?
Now transgender is you know, okay, cross-dressing is one thing. That means that you're a guy, but you're cross-dressing. But at the same time...
But not necessarily gay.
Yeah, not necessarily, but in terms of homosexual and actually transgender, you know, changing sex and cross-dressing, you know, I'll say statistically speaking, I know the statistics on homosexuals that were in that treatment facility, but the overall statistics of those populations in terms of the degree to which, compared to the general population, they would be more or less likely to do what you said, go into, for example, someone cross-dressing and then going into a girl's bathroom and then doing something to a girl. I don't know that, but that's something that we should know. There shouldn't be a mandate from the federal government. This is something good to know without having an informed public.
But this was also also, these are state laws too. These are state statutes.
Oh yeah,
that were
this
being
is state
passed.
statutes.
So,
yeah.
I mean, we're seeing this at the state level, and then we're seeing some pushback on this as well, right?
And exactly. And
so where should we be going with this? And
this is exactly what we should be doing. Right now, we basically have a huge agenda being shoved, just like how it happened in Hawaii with SB1. It was just kind of shoved in there. It was just kind of, this is going to happen. You know, all of our Congress people said this is going to happen, and the government said this is going to happen, and they pushed it through. And of course, you know, the reaction to that was, of course, he didn't get elected again, the governor, because he just pushed something through, regardless of what people thought.
Well, this goes to the Newtonian.
Oh yeah, it does. It does.
The name of our show today.
Exactly.
Newtonian. Third rule of Newton. Of Newton's law is that for every reaction,
there's an equal and opposite reaction. And I think it was historical, the way how the governor lost that election because of the historical kind of push that he did to get this legislation through. Well, bang, there was that reaction. But, and that's because people didn't like being just forced to have something done to them. Instead, an informed process. And let's say that we can come up with something.
Well, I can speak to what was going on at the legislature because I was an office manager during that event, and I can tell you there was a lot of politicking and people politicians knocking on each other's doors to sort of coalesce the Democratic Party to unanimously pass SB1.
And I'll just say that I spoke to a Democratic legislature in my region. And she herself was homosexual. She herself was a lesbian, and she said to me that, you know, my gosh, you know, because I testified, and she said, you know, I testified. I testified because I'm a pianist, and I essentially said, wow, I won't be able to do any more weddings because I'll get sued. I'll have a homosexual couple ask me to do a wedding, but they don't really want me to do a wedding. They want me to do it so they can sue me when I refuse to do it because it's against my religion, and I don't want to do it. And so what she said, she just came up to me. She's lesbian, and she said, how would we do this? How would we figure out a situation where someone like you as a pianist could still play piano for those religious events you want to play for those weddings, and yet still make it so that we're taking care of the homosexuals too that want to get married? How could we figure this out? She wanted to figure out how to take care of everybody in a structured format where it's not just shoving something through, it's coming up with a solution that everyone feels good about instead of a huge push and a big blowback. Okay?
Yeah.
And I'll have to say, I have so much respect for her for how she spoke to me. You know, she is the only legislator that spoke to me after I testified, and she had the most concern. She was a lesbian.
Yeah.
And so she really was able to just step above the fray,
Right.
more so than the whole
Well,
democratic.
I think
yeah.
she was really able to take a look at it from an objective
Exactly,
perspective and not
exactly.
necessarily a subjective one. right?
Exactly, you
Yeah,
got
yeah,
it.
yeah,
You got it right
yeah.
there.
Now, it sounds like this is an area where we need to where we need more work.
Exactly.
Would you agree with that?
Oh, yes, yes.
So let's talk a little bit about an area of concern, which is immigration.
Okay.
Now, we got Trump on one side saying, build a wall. And we got Bernie Sanders saying, let them all in.
Okay.
Okay. But, we have a tweet here. It says, change the economy, discuss how... No, that's not our tweet? Okay. If homosexual men follow cyclical patterns of sexual abuse, how would transphobic bathroom laws protect young boys or anyone? Yeah, that's a good quote. That's a good question.
Yeah. Okay. First, let me. Oh, it disappeared. Oh, there we go.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. First of all, let me say this. I didn't say that just by being homosexual that you're a sexual abuser. I didn't say that. Okay. What I said was that of the population that I had in that juvenile detention facility, the majority of boys there were homosexual. And so what we do know is that when abuse happens, it tends to be repeated, but it may not be repeated. There might be someone that was so traumatized by sexual abuse on them that they never want to put someone else in that situation. Okay, so I'm not saying that homosexual men are abusers.
There are things that happen in bathrooms. I've had an incident once when I was at Ala Moana Shopping Center, and some guy had a cell phone, and he was showing erotic pictures under the stall, and I had to tell him to put his phone away. That was disgusting, So there are things like that happen. I mean, it just real world weird things happen. So I think the thing is if you're a parent, you have a responsibility to take some measures to protect your children.
Yeah,
right?
and how would transphobic bathroom laws protect young boys or anyone?
Yeah.
Well, you're saying transphobic. It's not transphobic. It's laws that make it so that we know who people are when they're going into the bathroom.
Right. But if you're a guy and your proclivity is to dress up like a woman and you go into the woman's bathroom.
Well, these are schools. I mean, you can do that. We're just saying that. And if you choose to dress up like a female, just like if I chose, for example, I could go into the school, and like I said, I had been called the N-word. I've been called other word. Everything I was called, I was not. They just couldn't figure out what I was, so they just called me whatever they could. Right?
Yeah.
Now I could have worn a shirt across, and it was a school that had about 5 that were non-Caucasian. I could have said something very, very bad about Caucasians on my shirt and walked in, and what's going to happen to me? That's my choice. If someone chooses to cross-dress, that's their choice. They don't have to do it in schools.
Right.
Okay, so what you call transphobic bathroom laws, it simply does is it makes it so that everyone up front knows what you are instead of someone going into the bathroom.
So what you're talking about is full disclosure.
Yeah, it's disclosure.
But how do you disclose that? I mean, if you're a kid in a school, wouldn't kids know eventually? It wouldn't take them very long to figure out.
Not necessarily.
To know if a
Not
child
necessarily. Let's
is
say
of a
that there's a new
particular,
kid in the school. He sees a beautiful girl. Let's say that this guy.
Oh, okay, because he's a new student.
Yeah, new student in school. Right. He doesn't know anyone, and no one wants to talk to him. And he meets this girl,
But she goes in the bathroom with him.
She goes in the bathroom. Whoa! I guess you're a guy. Yes, I am. Whoops. Okay. So it just makes it so things are
at that point he kind of gets the drift.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So what you're talking when you're saying protecting young boys, the protection happens because we know where everyone is literally gender-wise. We know it.
Yeah.
That's how people are protected when the truth is there versus a ruse.
See, so I would say, well, I think we'll figure it out.
Okay.
I think we'll figure it out. I think it's one of those things that the answers aren't always apparent, and sometimes they're driven by fear.
Oh, yeah.
I'm a father who spent 2 years trying to get his children out of a foreign country, and only to come back and face prejudice here in Hawaii. So I know that a lot of people have a lot of fear over things, and so I think in time we'll sort it. I think we will. I have confidence that we're smart people. We'll figure these things out.
As long as we don't have these, mandate with a big push and a big pull, and then things just go into
There
has to be.
Well, we're gonna take a commercial break.
Okay, sure.
Let's talk about immigration when we come back. Okay, let's change the topic a little bit. I'm Chris Lethem. This is The Economy and You. Today's guest is John Roco. He is the candidate for the U.S. Senate, and he's the Republican candidate. So we'll be right back. Well,
okay, this is Think Tech Hawaii, and it's Wednesday. Every Wednesday is Energy Wednesday here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy. 4 to 5 p.m. every Wednesday. Come and listen to us. And just to show you what I mean, I'm going to ask Sharon to tell us more.
Come and see us every Wednesday, as Jay said. And we have people like Jim Albers from HECO here and co-host Ray Starling here every Wednesday. We not only go on Olelo and OC16, but also stream live. So please come visit us, hear about the latest in clean energy.
Okay, Jim, you've been here. You got any comment on all this?
As important as energy is in all of our lives today, this is a great forum and a great format to vet those issues. So I encourage everybody to listen in and participate.
Okay, Ray, what do you think for a close?
Well, I think this is the greatest show in the energy world here in Hawaii. You can come here every week, 1 hour, and catch the latest on what's happening and hear from the people who really know what's going on, like Jim Alberts. We appreciate your coming today.
Thank you.
Ray Starling, Sharon Moriwaki, Jim Alberts, and Jay Fidel here in Hawaii, the state of clean energy.
Aloha.
4 to 5 p.m. Wednesday. Aloha.
Aloha.
and we're back. Hi, I'm Chris Lethem. This is The Economy and You here on Think Tech Hawaii, and today's guest is John Roco, Republican candidate for U.S. Senate. And boy, I got you riled up there, John.
Oh yeah, you got the fermented ideas in the back of my mind coming out.
Well, let's talk about immigration, because Trump has been talking about the wall that he's going to make Mexico pay for, and then we've got, on the other hand, we've got Bernie Sanders. It's sort of and then we've got we've had cities that are sort of protected cities, or they're protecting immigrants, and then we got, I don't know, is it California or Oregon or somewhere where they're talking about the whole state being sort of this place that will protect immigrants from U.S. federal law, and so this is a sort of it's an issue, because on one hand, we talk about these people coming in and they take menial jobs that most people don't want to do, even though there are people who will do it. I'm not saying nobody will do it, but I am saying that some people wouldn't do it, and so those jobs get filled and the work gets done. Those people pay taxes, of course, but because it's taken out of their paychecks, but they never really get Social Security. They don't receive some of the benefits. That sort of goes back into the pot. On the other hand, they utilize resources. In schools, they utilize hospitals, and it's one way, of course, for a woman to eventually be able to stay in the United States is, if she were to come across and give birth to a child here in the U.S., she could leverage that child as potentially an opportunity to stay in the United States and take care of that child, and maybe eventually get a green card or citizenship, but just sort of skirting around the way the system is currently designed.
Exactly.
Now, I would argue that the current system, the way it's designed, is flawed. Would you agree with that?
I agree it's flawed, and I think I'll just give one personal example that I haven't shared with you.
Okay, well,
this will stick
please
out
share.
a little bit. Okay, my dad, all my life I worked at my parents' rentals. That was my first job, pulling weeds, painting. When I was in college, I'd be painting duplexes. My dad was a surgeon, and we had rentals and that type of thing. My mom passed away. My dad was operating them himself, and there were illegal immigrants coming in, and my dad took mercy on them. He really did. My father speaks Spanish because I'm of Filipino descent, and the Philippines were descended from the Spaniards. And so my dad speaks Spanish from his dad, because his dad was a judge in the Philippines that spoke Spanish, a Spanish judge. And so my dad would take mercy on them, and he would let them stay in some of the duplexes.
Were they paying rent?
That's what I'm getting to.
Ah, okay.
That's what I'm getting to. One, there was a case where someone wasn't paying rent, and my dad, went and asked for the rent from one of these individuals, one of these illegal immigrants that he was taking mercy on. The illegal immigrant threatened to kill my dad. And I'm not sure what he displayed or what he didn't, but he made it very. And my dad's a surgeon. I mean, and he was taking mercy on these, all these people that my dad spoke a common language with. And so here was my.
So he was being taken advantage of by this guy.
This guy wasn't paying rent. He wasn't paying rent. My dad was simply asking for the rent. And so here was like my 70-year-old dad that for the first time in his life, someone threatens to kill him. He's a surgeon. He's very prominent. You know, it's easy to find him. And so my dad gets, oh gosh, you know, he reported to the police. He got gun training because my dad lives on a ranch, a farm, and someone could easily go and kill him. You know, and so my dad, as a 70-something-year-old man, gets training and what have you, and that's just one side of it. So sometimes when we don't have screening for who's coming over the border, we don't know the types of things that will happen.
Well, the thing is, you know, with the porous border, you could have people not just from Mexico coming in, but you could have people coming in from South America, or you could have people coming in from other parts of the world who really have an agenda to do massive harm to people here in the United States.
Yeah, so here's someone that threatened to kill my dad. Well, yeah, what if some people that are radicalized and want to hit headlines and show what they can do decide that they're going to carry this out, you know? What if Hawaii? You know, look, we have these wonderful hotels. We have these airlines coming in. If someone
it would
wants
have
to really
a real impact on our economy.
Yeah, it'd be huge. And so, you know, when you don't screen anybody, what could happen? And what has happened? And we saw Paris, we saw San Bernardino. Okay, I went to Loma Linda University, just 2 miles from there. And I taught at San Bernardino Valley College 2 miles from there. And that same facility, I mean, I passed by there to pick up papers once for something. But these were people that were integrated in, and look at the damage that they did. Definitely, in today's days and times, we need to know who's coming through.
What kind of a process would you like to see implemented?
The type of process, and right now it's funny because, you know, it's similar to the foster parenting process. To become a foster parent, I used to be a foster parent, social worker. All you do is you just you show that you have no past criminal record. You have a couple interviews, and bang, you can become a foster parent.
So should we do the same thing in immigration?
No, I'm saying that's the problem with immigration. It's the same process. You know, people basically, you know, like someone's marrying someone, they have an interview or something, and, you know, the tool that we're not using, and the reason why I say this is because this was a specialty that I worked on in graduate school, is that we are not using psychological testing, which is very easy. We have all of the technology. You know, this is something I studied for 5-6 years of graduate school.
Well, you know, other countries, for example, in New Zealand or Australia, you know, they bring people in who basically they see as our financial asset to the country.
Yes.
You know, like if you have a degree, if you have, you know.
Well, we do that too. We have special talents.
We do, but we also bring people in. They come here to study, and then they get all the knowledge that our colleges have to offer them. And then we say, well, you know what? It was great to have you here, but you know we're tired of you now. So take all that knowledge and training that you got, and go build a business back home in the country you came from, and compete with companies in the United States. So I love that policy. To me, that's a great policy. That's a way to ensure, you know, our you know, that we're going to build our own competition. So, I mean, I see that as a flawed policy. I think if we're going to have people come here and we're going to educate them and train them, we want to entice them to stay and be an asset for our nation. You know, we have all these high-tech jobs, for example, and I'm going to talk about this because high-tech is one of my areas as a software engineer.
Sure.
And we have all these people who come over from India, and they take a lot of jobs that American programmers, they'll do the work for less than, say, an American might do the work for. So we bring them in, and they add value to our economy, and they create more competition for those jobs because there's less, you know, there aren't enough people in the United States with that training to fill those positions. Even bringing people in, there still aren't enough people in the United States to fill all the slots available in the technology space. Okay, so that's a real challenge. But so maybe we need to refocus and I'm just suggesting that we focus on bringing and growing our population from people who have a desire to succeed and add value to our nation and our economy, and build toward that. And maybe we need screening, and I get the value of psychological screening because I can see the sense of that. But and maybe, I mean, yes, there should be some allowing of people based on if you're in a predicament, you're in a war zone or something like that. I think there needs to be some sympathy there, and you know, we can't just be an apathetic nation. You know, there needs to be balance. But It just seems our current policy is a failed policy.
Yeah, and what you're talking about right now is exactly how my dad came to the United States. And during the baby boom era, there was a lack of medical professionals in the United States. There was a lack, you know, and so actually you had different areas competing for surgeons that were foreign graduates. They would try to, my dad talked about it, that he would visit this area, we'll provide this, we'll provide this. They wanted these surgeons because there weren't enough surgeons in the United States. In the town that my dad moved to, there was only 3 surgeons for a population of like 25,000 people, approximately the whole area. And so, that's what you're talking about is exactly how my dad came in. There was a need for these people to serve everyone that's already in the United States.
Right.
And how can they
And then fundamentally, we're adding growth to our economy. We're bringing people that have skill sets that add value to the quality of the lives of the people who live in this country. And those people, those are people that have successful families.
Yeah.
Right. Families and then their children, are generally more inclined to be successful as well.
Yeah.
So we're spurring growth and success in our country.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that just because if you grew up poor that we won't let you in.
Yeah.
But we certainly should have a mechanism in place that if you're going to come in here, that there's some way to identify you as somebody who's going to contribute to the economy.
Yeah. And that's where the problem is, when we can identify repeat offenders that, like I think the classic case that during this presidential election era in San Francisco, where someone that already had been deported a few times, murdered someone there in San Francisco. I mean, this happens.
And this happens repeatedly. So this one incident. But what do we do with that? I mean, do we keep these people locked up forever? I mean, but we have a porous border. Do we need, as Donald Trump says, do we need to build a big wall across our border?
I think the proverbial, and it's interesting, I think proverbial wall, because we hear about walls. We hear about the walls of
They're
Jericho.
electronic walls, they're physical walls.
Yeah,
but I mean, you've got all these systems that they set up these infrared detection systems.
Exactly. Well, right now, and especially in light of San Bernardino and what happened in Paris, we need something that lets us know who is coming in, who is not, and who should not, and how do we keep them out.
But we also value our freedom. We're a people who value liberty.
Yeah.
And one of the problems with government through the millennia is the more power you give government, the more it enslaves its own people and implements policies that are about preserving the status quo as opposed to, allowing people to express their liberties and be creative and try new things. I mean, there has to be that balance, right?
Yeah, exactly. And probably one of the biggest things that that I see in terms of that balance is, and I think that, I forget his name. He was on NBC years ago. His son's name is Luke, but he was one of the commentators on NBC. He passed away like about 5 years ago. But one of the big things that he spoke about was the difference between big town and small town. And because, for example, with gun rights, that type of thing, if you live in a very, very small town like I was, and you have someone like my dad who has a threat, to his life, the police aren't going to be around. You need something to protect yourself.
That's true. That's the difference. Well, thank you for being on the show today, John, and thank you for being on Think Tech Hawaii. If people wanted to find out more about your campaign, how could they find you? How could they reach out to you?
Google my name, John Roco.
John Roco. Okay, very good. All right, John Roco, thank you for being on the show.
Okay.
And I'm Chris Lethem here with Think Tech Hawaii, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week, Wednesday, 3 o'clock, right here. Aloha.